We've got a super interesting session this morning, and I'm delighted to be joined by Mr. David Kershaw and Mr. Warren Smith from Posterity Global. They are known to us in CDPS because they've advised us on digital procurement and lots of procurements, in fact, over the last few years. But they are right at the forefront of advising people on AI procurement. And that's why we've asked them to come and talk to us today. And I know a couple of colleagues have asked about bringing procurement colleagues along. Absolutely great to this session. But as I say, we're recording, so if they're not able to make it today, then you'll be able to send them the link to this video. Right, we're up to 29 people in total, I think, just to get started and give David and Warren as much time as possible. I'm going to hand over now, if that's okay. David, is it over to you to start?
Yeah, thank you, Pete.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. We find ourselves having to say those words quite often as we're working more and more internationally than ever, which is great for a Cardiff-based company that's trying to do procurement stuff and trying to do modern digital era ways of working. I just made a few notes there. Someone mentioned distillery a minute ago, and this is kind of a bit like a distillery, right? It's a community of practice. So what we say here is not to say right, not to say wrong. Throw some grenades in if you like. Throw the questions in. And thoughts as well. You know, we want to do this together as a community of public sector workers, public sector advisories that are in the world of digital and I suppose emerging tech and industry 5.0. So throw your questions in as they go. No wrong or right question, and we'll get going really. So just briefly, Warren and I were part of the UK Government Digital Service, which was now gov.uk many years ago. And we have always worked in emerging tech, and we started there where cloud was new, and we had to work very hard with advising Cabinet Office as well as local authorities about how to procure and contract cloud. Obviously, things have moved on now, and we all just use cloud, but this is kind of 12 years ago. And when AI was kind of coming out the last 2 or 3 years, Warren and I have been a bit vocal on some of the points which were around we struggle to contract for it, let alone procure it, let alone speak to the market. So what we're about to show you now is 2 years worth of us listening, reading, prodding, throwing rocks, meeting people, and hopefully you'll benefit from it. So I'll just start to share my screen. Okay, so hopefully I'll look at Pete to give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen. Yes, right, thank you, Pete Thomas. So this is specifically about procurement and contract management of AI suppliers and systems. We can talk about other things such as how you work with suppliers or how you use AI in procurement operations, but predominantly about this session today. We wanted just to start by explaining some of the changes that we've seen over the last few years. This is part of our standard sort of sales slides, but we've identified 3 that we think are really important. As you can see on the left here, there's 2 tables. There's another slide in a second. On the left, you'll see a collection of things, items, activities, and positions which we believe all organizations, small, medium, and large, public, private, multinational, as well as semi-public bodies such as the UN, etc. We believe they're moving from this column in the left to the column in the right. We've identified in the red arrow here that we believe that many of those organizations are moving from an e-government industry 4.0 mindset, requirements and products and services to a more digital government and a more industry 5.0 led area. That's based on the needs of their users, but also the needs of human-centered design. So we think that's a major point for us, hence why we're talking today. Second, sort of secondary effect of that is this is not a lecture about the new Procurement Act 2023, although we're more than happy to talk about that another time. But we are seeing now that organisations are asking their staff to stop sort of just trying to avoid legal challenge in procurement, but actually work with the rules and regulations, work with the right practices and policies to make sure that we can all collectively deliver what we know as the art of the possible, and that's the whole ecosystem. And just lastly, again, another point which we really want to major on, especially when we're talking to yourselves and focus on the well-being of future generations and the earth effectively, is a move from just thinking about the green agenda that we must do this, we must try and do this, to actually let's actually deliver it. So just as a bit of a scene setting from our business, what we've seen, and I'll just go on to Warren, one more slide actually, before I go on to Warren for the more wider global view. These are a collection of subjects that we're interested in. As you can see, there's quite a few there, but for today's exercise, we really focus on how AI can be used to make procurement and contract management better, how suppliers of AI can supply it better, can propose better ideas, and actually can deliver it better within the constraints it has, but also how we can procure it and ultimately procure a contract for effective delivery. So as I say, lots of interesting themes from our side, but these are the three that we are sort of going to focus on. Warren, over to you.
Thanks, David, and hello, everybody. Nice to be back with you. It's our second time as part of this community of practice, so great to be here. Just before I get into some of the kind of UK developments, David, you mentioned that there is effectively a global kind of swell of change is happening. And I think one of the things that I wanted to just kind of anchor into this conversation is the UN's Summit of the Future, which was held as part of the UN General Assembly last September in New York. And that brought together world leaders, heads of state, heads of government, and a bunch of other organizations. And as part of that summit, the outcome documents were the Pact for the Future, and that included two key annexes, the Declaration on Future Generations and the Global Digital Compact. And it wouldn't surprise you that, given the kind of the words that are embedded in those in the session and the documents, that Wales was actually had quite a leading and pivotal hand in helping to shape both the summit and the outcome documents. If you've not read those documents, it's certainly one top of the list of our kind of recommended reading list, because it helps to kind of frame our thinking around how do we need to think differently and act differently in order to really embrace the art of the possible when it comes to the sustainable development agenda. And the fact that I don't think it was by accident, the fact that it was held effectively kind of midway through the decade leading up to 2030 for sustainable development agenda, it effectively kind of creates a permissive reboot of the sustainable development agenda. And obviously Wales's leadership on that, celebrating 10 years since the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act this year, back from 2015, I think is really key. So yeah, very, very much a kind of a global kind of narrative that helps us to frame how we then think about different ways of approaching these kind of contextual challenges across the UK, but also specifically in Wales. And I know the Office of the Future Generations Commissioner will be doing some celebrations in the coming month or so around the 10-year anniversary of the Act as well. But yeah, just some recent developments, mainly out of the UK government, but we've got here the Blueprint for Modern Digital Government that you may have seen. It was published a couple of months ago, January, in fact, I think it was. And this really kind of sets out kind of both the sort of problem space around digital transformation, innovation, and other areas that they're kind of calling out for change. And this was off the back of some preceding reports that came out. The State of Digital Government Review, I think, was one, also around the same time as a National Audit Office report as well. This was a very useful kind of, again, sort of a positioning of the challenges and opportunities that come. And AI is a really fundamental part of how we think about approaching problem solving in the public sector, and also within that, although it's talking about kind of like a reboot of the government digital service, the new government digital service, as they refer to the digital centre of government. They're also talking about an ambition and indeed a need to reach more broadly across the whole public sector, including health trusts, arm's length bodies, devolved administrations. So it'd be really interesting to see how DSITs, the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, and GDS, Government Digital Service, really kind of lead into that and look across into Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland as well. But there's many things within there, and we've published some thoughts on this on our website. But some of the things that really struck out for us was this kind of test and learn narrative, and we've heard that quite often across many kind of publications or speeches that have been given by ministers and others relatively recently. But this really is fundamental when it comes to public procurement of new and emerging technologies, including AI, that we really need to embrace experimentation and also think differently about how we construct procurement and contracts to exploit the fact that we are learning very rapidly, and how we share those learnings from those experiments across networks and organizations such as communities of practice, exactly like the session we're holding today, and the community that are coming together as part of CDPS's work in this regard in Wales. So I think that really goes to the heart of the opportunities that come from the Procurement Act. The competitive flexible procedure really does give us the tools and the permission to design something, a process that is really going to embrace the art of the possible. Back to David's point within those the comparison table of the sort of characteristics that we describe as digital commercial, really fundamental. So if anybody on the call hasn't read the Blueprint for Modern Digital Government, again, I would put that in the top 5 of your reading list after the UN's Pact for the Future. If you could go to the next slide, please, David. Excuse me. More recently, the Government Digital Service also published its artificial intelligence playbook for the UK government, which again, it's very useful. It provides some additional references to new information, but what it also does is refer back to some existing guidance, which actually was published nearly 5 years ago, which was the guidelines for AI procurement, which was developed by the then Office for Artificial Intelligence. That's now been merged into the new Digital Centre of Government, GDS. And if folks on this call may recall that David and I were invited by CDPS to present a webinar in November 2023 on procuring AI for the public sector in Wales, and our reflections of the existing guidance at that time was that actually it generally represents good commercial practice, irrespective of what the technology is that's being bought. So there was probably the vast majority of the guidance, as I said, was good commercial practice. And actually, there was very little that really referenced specifics about artificial intelligence, like model testing, algorithmic transparency, and new approaches to governance, which were quite specific, and we welcome those specific elements. And I think it's important that we build on the specifics of AI in relation to procurement and contracting, because it feels that that's still a bit of an area that needs exploration, and it needs to be informed by the test and learn approaches that we've already mentioned here. And that's why it really does need to be based and grounded in practicalities of applying new approaches to help organizations to navigate this new ever increasing new space of innovation, but also because of the changes to the procurement regulations, that introduces a sense of new possibilities, but also some uncertainty and doubt because of the change. And also, what's interesting, before we move on, interesting about the AI playbook is it also refers to more of a holistic approach, thinking about what needs to happen differently before the procurement. So business cases for AI, there's reference to the agile business case guidance, as well as other treasury guidance to support this, as well as the need for a greater focus on what happens after a contract has been awarded. So again, we're seeing a much more emphasis on holistic approaches. This is also borne out in the NAO guidance that was published recently as well. So again, another piece of guidance worth reading. And if you could just go on to the next slide, please, David. I know CDPS have also been supporting this and indeed feeding into it, but relatively recently, the Connected by Data, working with Trade Union Congress Wales, TUC Cymru, published this toolkit on worker voice in public sector procurement of digital and AI systems in Wales. This for us was absolutely spot on. Again, it takes a holistic view across the public investment lifecycle. Notice I used the word investment there. One of the other characteristics within our comparison table, we need to move away from thinking purely about the flow of public funds being spending. That is far too transactional, and we need to be thinking about investment and thinking about the social returns on those investments in digital and AI systems. But this toolkit is excellent because it puts the Social Partnership and Public Procurement Wales Act 2023 also into consideration here. So while the Procurement Act 2023 is fundamentally important, the context in Wales is, as we know, broader from a procurement legislation context. What's also very interesting, and we're delighted to see within the toolkit that was published by Connected by Data and TUC Cymru, is reference to, under its resources section, to the keyed procurement reform sandbox, which we describe as a new way of thinking and working, and introducing new tools and techniques to help anticipate change, to think about future possibilities, to chart a new path forward, but really fundamentally thinking about how we need to bring in a more diverse set of voices into both the discussion and also the design of procurements and contracts to ensure that those participatory approaches and the diverse needs of people, including workers in this case, are taken deeply into consideration when thinking about how we approach procuring and contracting for AI. So yeah, if anybody wants to kind of talk about the sandbox approach, that's something that we're now discussing with the Welsh Government about how we roll that out more broadly in support of Welsh public authorities to embrace the art of the possible with the new regulations, not exclusively about AI systems and digital, but how to navigate the change that comes with new regulations. So yeah, if I was to choose 4 things, I know there's only 3 here, but these 3 plus the Pact for the Future from the UN should be top of anybody's reading list when thinking about AI and procurement. Back to you, David, momentarily.
Thanks, Warren. So we've heard from Warren about kind of vision, strategy, big stuff, playbooks, reports, all that big stuff. But as you know, in a new category, it's about learning from people at the coalface, and what can you take from this session today to go, right, my CEO or the board has said we're doing AI, like, well, how do you buy it, how do you procure it, how do you contract for it? So going to go through a few slides now, which hopefully will touch on some of those. So just briefly, as a company, we focus on 3 elements of the term AI and procurement. We help organisations procure it and contract for it. As I mentioned before, we help suppliers supply it better, advising them on how they can work with regulations and propose things within a compliant way, but also how AI can make procurement operations better. That's not for today. Just to say, all of our sources are not just our views and opinions, they're based on 2 years of work. Here's a few of them here just to mention. So we held an unconference. For those that are unaware of the unconference, I'm sure you all are, but we got a load of people together, about 60 people together last year. And the challenge was, how do you procure AI? We had about 40 people from buy side, from the public sector, about 20 people from supply side, as well as some academics and some legal people. And you can see there what happened. We also spoke at Procurement Live and had some feedback there. We've been talking at Cardiff University about the subject. We've done a special report with SIPS, the Chartered Institute of Procurement Supply, about AI procurement, and that's a special report. Also spoke to World Commerce and Contracting, and we have this AI procurement LinkedIn group. So I've basically said here, we'd like to do a lot more, specifically in Wales, about these unconferences. So if you're up for that, let us know, and we can discuss how that works. So here's kind of getting into the nitty-gritty now. So from our experience, there are many more, but these are the first 12, right, to get you going. There are 12 problems and risks that we foresee in the world of procuring and contracting for AI. I think often people get excited about the procurement aspect of the life cycle. And that's great. We're more into, you're trying to get a contract that's going to deliver some stuff that's going to make things better. So when we talk about this, we are really focusing on the contract that results after the procurement. I'm not going to go through every single one. I'll probably just go through the headlines of each, but read it as you can, really. So there's a huge lack of expertise, procurement expertise in the world of AI, emerging tech. There's not that much in DDAP, to be honest. There are hardly any people who can procure cloud effectively and manage contracts for cloud. So now we've got this AI thing coming on. I don't know what's going to happen there. Really is a real lack of knowledge about the AI market, intellectual property, pricing models, data security, how you evaluate performance. It seems that no one really knows how to do that collectively. There's a load of data related challenges, as you'd expect. Now, many people on this call are probably more advanced than our knowledge in this, but for me, when we think about all of these points, what type of contractual clauses do you need to put in place to make sure data is secure and effectively doesn't drift? We've got this whole issue about ethical and compliance risks, and great that we can talk about it, but how do you actually contract for it? There's a few here about contractual complexities. So these are quite obvious to everybody, but growth is really important for me, because if you use data to grow a supplier's provision to make their product or service better, where do you stand contractually on that? So have a little think around that, because ultimately that will affect the exit when you come to the end of your contract. I don't think anyone's even thinking about the exit of an AI contract at the moment. It's great that we're pursuing it, but what happens at the end? Again, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I also think, just to flag this kind of financial planning and return on investment uncertainty, I really want to speak to some finance people, ideally in the Welsh public sector, to help tackle this together. So if any of your financial people are wanting a conversation, please send them my way, because again, we can't do this together. We noticed this in the digital, in the DDAT space, also in the agile delivery space, when we worked with some finance managers procuring and contracting for sort of agile delivery methodology, which is obviously very different to traditional IT. I just wanted to show you this. So in our opinion, there are 3 personas from the buy side. So we believe there are the pursuers, so those that have actively made the decision they're going to get, do, acquire, have AI within their organization. And the sentence here, they may or may not know how to do it. So a board or a CEO may have just said, we're off we go. So the organization may be pursuing it, but the individuals might not be fully on board. There are those that are debating how they can use it and when they're going to use it, and there are those that are detached. I'm really curious to test everyone on this call and say, where are you on that list, or which persona are you, and also where do you think your organization is? So yeah, that's a bit of homework if you want. And obviously, I want to make sure you're aware from the supply side what the personas are. Again, these are our views based on the last 2 years' worth of work. So again, we believe they're the tech giants that have great ideas. They are, yeah, absolutely, Peter. They're the tech giants who have got leading the way. Have got buckets of investment going on in R&D. We can see that happening with most national governments throughout the world. Then we've got the leading suppliers. We've got the established suppliers, and then we've got the emerging suppliers and industry innovators. Again, interested to know where you think you are contracting and which one of these you're contracting with at the moment. It might be you've got all four. There'll be a blend, obviously, as I just mentioned on the chat. But again, especially these tech giants, how are you going to exit the contract at the end? So we've kind of heard that there's a lot of problems. We've got these personas. We've got some big visionary stuff. Before we go on to the next set of slides, I just wanted Warren to talk through how we as an organisation approach things, and also we believe this is the best approach for organisations operating in the digital era. Warren, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, David. So yeah, I'll just touch briefly on this because I've not already mentioned that several organisations and indeed the likes of Chartered Institute Procurement and Supply, the toolkit Connected by Data, talk about a holistic approach. It's no different to ours in terms of the digital commercial lifecycle. However, there are some subtle differences in terms of language, and this very much is informed by our work in Wales, and that's why at the heart of everything we do and advise is around ensuring that public value and well-being impact is the ultimate outcome of any investment decision. Again, that keyword rather than spend. So yeah, we see and really emphasise the importance of public value and well-being impact as effectively the North Star of any consideration at every stage of that digital commercial life cycle. That should be, okay, well, how are we going to increase and maximise public value and well-being impact? I just want to put that into a little bit of context. When we talk about understanding needs under the plan and prepare stage, that's not just about the needs of the communities that government is there to serve today. We have to be thinking about the needs of service users who perhaps are not yet adult service users of transportation systems or other infrastructure. So when we think about the school leavers and indeed the adults of the near future, or indeed the long future, we need to be thinking about how we bring their voices into the discussions, and indeed having giving them the opportunity to help shape the narrative for a future state in which they are going to be a user. And I was really it was great to see that just before the AI summit held in Paris last month, that the Alan Turing Institute held the first Children's Summit on AI in collaboration with Queen Mary University. And this, for me, I was like, right, well, that's taking this seriously. That's actually giving children the ability to express their concerns, needs, which is then presented as a manifesto to leaders at the summit. So when we think about needs here, yes, we have to be thinking about intergenerational needs. And I think Wales' leadership in thinking beyond current generations is absolutely vital here. Equally, just briefly, ecosystem engagement. So often we see kind of traditional linear supply chains being the focus of prime and subprimes. But actually, we need to be thinking much more sort of horizontally and again holistically about capabilities that the supply market can provide, and indeed helping SMEs and voluntary organisations to come together to harness the collective power of their capabilities, rather than thinking about we need a single company to provide all of these things. So yeah, procure, we mentioned that should largely be a means to an end, and the end being delivering public value and wellbeing impact through the contracts that are being awarded. But ultimately, those contracts really need to create those enabling environments for innovation to thrive, rather than inertia, and then also having our eye on that exit from day one. So we're not inadvertently locking ourselves into either a technology or a commercial arrangement that doesn't give us the ability to adapt, to flex, and to exploit the positive opportunities that come from the experimental approach of testing the. So yeah, that is our kind of 10 points, and we'll be publishing shortly some additional information about the guiding principles that we see to be fundamental to help deliver on a more holistic approach to investment decisions throughout the digital commercial lifecycle. Thank you. Back to you, David.
Yeah, thank you, Warren. I think it's quite interesting to also make sure people are aware that, you know, traditionally government organisations, public sector bodies, let's just blanket term, use standard T's and C, terms and conditions, standard ITT packs. This really worries me. So, you know, is your organisation going to be using its standard ITT pack that you use for paper and pens and HR and insurance for getting this stuff? That is a big issue. So consequently, what's happening is I think we're all buying, sorry, the public sector is buying AI like it buys cloud on the suppliers' terms. And again, hyperscale is great, we need them. However, they are becoming more powerful now than some nations, their own nations' sort of influence and power. So my sort of plea would be, call to action would be, let's think how we could develop an ITT pack in the broadest sense, route to market or route to market sort of invitation to tender pack, RFP pack, and T's and C's suitable for the Welsh public sector that all people can use, just to bolster some of their views. So we've spoken for about 27 minutes now, so I just wanted to give you a few things to take away, and then we'll open up some questions. So what we want to do is make sure that, again, being a community of practice, so you can actually learn from each other and practice and take things away. So we've published our 10 critical considerations for procuring AI. These are them, they're here. You can access it here with more information. I'm more than happy to share what they are. But as you can see, we've gone through, basing on the research we've done, the 10 main things that are keeping people awake about procuring and contracting for AI. Again, have a look through this list, have a look at the link here. And what we're doing now is every fortnight we're majoring on each one of these. So last week we published our focus on make sure you can procure cloud first before you get excited about AI. And we'll go through each of those. And then here are just some actions that kind of wanted to sort of express to this community of practice. So if I was leading the procurement of AI in a public body, or we're going on a big AI 3-year plan, I'd be wanting to run with some of these. So start thinking how you can develop your procurement expertise in the world of AI. Think about training and education. Warren mentioned Keed. This is the Welsh Government's Procurement Centre of Excellence. Go and have a chat to them and see what you can do. Start thinking about what guides you need in place, especially with the point about exit at the end and vendor lock-in, which has been mentioned. Start thinking about using your traditional back office functions a bit more. I mentioned about finance, but also about legal, HR, as well as audit, how you can work together, those kind of enabling functions, what risks and concerns have they got as well. The governance and data and ethical guidance is probably an obvious one. But here we're starting to think now about what contract should the Welsh public sector have for AI? Like what terms should we be really stringent and strict on? Which others could we be a bit more flexible on? I do think we need to do some work in this space. Also, again, it mentions this sandboxing in financial management. So again, a bit of an action perhaps would be grab your finance managers and get them in an environment where you can test some of the ideas about how you finance and pay for this stuff. Budgets are different, budgets need to be different, and also payment mechanisms are very different as well, and making sure that everyone is on the same page in terms of paying for this. And the sort of the sixth one was about making sure that we have a really strong and strict contract management process in place, appropriate for tech, appropriate for AI and Industry 5.0 tech as well. And that you'll see here, we've actually said contract management and supply ecosystem management. I know there's quite a lot of organisations that work with the hyperscalers, but also they prime. So just need to be a bit more aware of what that means for delivery. And lastly, I kind of suggested that you give it a go, create a sandbox where you get some of your supply markets in and your contracting and contract managers in place, as well as your finance people. Give this sandbox session a go, and making sure that you can operate in a clean environment and a safe environment would be good. That's it, Pete. So we spoke there for 30 minutes. Hope that was useful, and we'll stop sharing now. And if there's any questions, happy to ask them or open for a bit of a debate.
Brilliant. Thank you both very much.